Hello, welcome to the Horticulturalists. I'm Matthew Lucas.
And I'm Stephen Ryan.
And we post a video every week on a Friday, so do hit subscribe if you want to know what our burning horticultural adventure might be each week.
And don't forget we do Monday Shorts, so if you've got a question you'd like to ask me, put it in the comments below. Make sure you tell me where you're from for context, and we'll get round to answering them on a Monday.
We will indeed. And today, Stephen, it's a little brisk. We're up at your nursery, Dactylorhiza rare plants. But I believe you have been somewhere that wasn't so brisk.
No, I've just come back only a few weeks ago from a big trip into Europe, and one of our stops was in Romania.
Now, I don't know why. I've always been somewhat fascinated by Romania. So
you don't have a Dracula issue, do you?
Well, you know, I think perhaps because the then Prince of Wales, now King Charles, has a very strong affinity with Romania and has done a lot with natural heritage there, so particularly architecture and the landscape. So why were you there?
Well, for similar reasons in a way.
You're not an heir to a throne.
No, unfortunately. Well, maybe fortunately, I don't know. But we went there, well, one, for the exercise, because we like to walk, and I love wildflowers. So Romania being one of those countries that has not terribly long ago come out from under the communist umbrella and is now a free country, but their agriculture and everything else is decades behind modern agriculture. So they're not using a lot of modern machinery, they're not using a lot of pesticides and poisons, and so their wildflowers are just amazing. So you can walk through fields that have got cows or sheep or whatever browsing away in them, and you'll walk through drifts of orchids and drifts of primulas, and it's just amazing to see these plants growing in a basically naturalistic environment. I guess the agricultural side of things has always been manipulated and probably has for centuries, but nonetheless, it's like it was centuries ago, so it was great fun.
So this is a video about the wildflowers of Romania, as seen by yourself and Craig, your partner, who went on a hiking/walking holiday. So contextualize, it was mid-spring in Europe when you went. Give us an idea of the climate, type of landscape.
All right, well, we were basically walking in the Carpathian Mountains, so we got up to reasonably high altitudes, and we stopped in villages and towns as we went along. So climatically, when we first started walking, it was actually freezing cold and wet for the first couple of days. You know, when you get soaked through your boots so that you feel like you're squelching, you know that it's been really wet. So the first couple of days it was really awful, the weather. But having said that, we saw lots of wildflowers, and I kept smiling because I was seeing lots of wildflowers, and that's all that really mattered from my perspective. But after the first few days, it really became spring after that, and we got some quite hot weather. It was certainly sunny most of the rest of the time. I don't think we got rained on again, although we had to slosh through mud in quite a few places. So it wasn't the easiest of walking, but we did it in a slightly cheating way, because we had our luggage moved from one hotel to the next, so we just had to carry a day pack and anything else we wanted during the day, and our camera equipment, all that sort of stuff. We knew where we had to walk to, we had plans and maps to follow, and still got lost a few times, but nonetheless managed to find our way through. Some days we walked for 8 hours or more, and sometimes it was up a mountainside and down the other side, so you know, it was challenging enough, but beautiful.
And well, as you can see from all the footage, now you take tours with ASA, and we've got a playlist of all the different tours you've done, which we'll link above. But this wasn't. This was just a private
This was
tour.
a private trip.
So you put it together yourself in terms of the itinerary and finding guides.
Well, what we actually did was we worked through a company in Europe that actually puts together walking tours. So all we had to do was get in touch with them, explain our particular requirements, which was to see lots of wildflowers, because a lot of people walk for the sake of walking. We were walking for the sake of wildflowers, so it was slightly different. We wanted specific things.
So you needed to be walking with a botanist or someone who
Well, you would like to, but we walked on our own.
Oh, right. So you weren't with a guide?
No, this was all self-guided.
Right. So if you found anything, it was just because you happened to find it. No one knew where clumps of X and Y were. Oh, Stephen, right. I didn't know that. There you go.
So
I'm even more impressed because we're going to show you what Stephen found on the trip.
Found lots of good wildflowers. And in fact, I have to say that different times where I've had guides in other walks that we've done, sometimes I could find the flowers when they didn't even know they were there. So sometimes, unless it's a truly botanical guide who really knows their stuff, then I'm likely to find the things anyway.
Yeah. Interesting, it's one of those hotspots because I was also in Georgia, the country, not the States, in late-ish spring. I was there in late April, early May, a few years ago. And the Caucasus Mountains is, again, one of those kind of botanical, particularly perennial hotspots. And I was there at a real sort of mini peak. And it was so breathtaking, and I saw Mollis azaleas actually.
Yeah, yes, as you would.
Screeched to a halt in the car because I saw this blob of orange. What's that? Anyway, but now back to Romania. So, Romania is a large country, very large country actually.
Yeah.
Whereabouts were you particularly?
Well, we obviously, because we were walking, you
Didn't
cover.
get very far.
No, you don't get very far when you do a walking tour. So basically, we confined ourselves to parts of the Carpathian Mountains, basically in the area well known as Transylvania. So we started in Brasov and we then walked. Some of them were walks that were loops that brought you back to the place you started. We had days off where we just spent the day in a major town and did the whole touristy thing, like visiting Bran Castle, where Dracula was supposed to have been, or Vlad the Impaler.
And we're showing you the footage now.
Yeah,
It looks,
so-
it looks charming. It doesn't look sinister and bloody.
Yeah, and it's very touristy, I have to say. It was the one place we went, I reckon, that was the sort of Disney-esque sort of thing. Because, I mean, it was the home of the Queen of Romania, which was far more important. It never had Vlad the Impaler. It never... Dracula apparently does not exist. And the tourists love it, though.
Did they have cheeky gifts? I mean,
Oh,
was
God,
there
yes.
things like, blood cocktails or something?
I have to tell you that I bought a pair of socks with bats on and a T-shirt with bats on.
That's not outrageous.
No, not outrageous, but very twee. And we had dinner in a magnificent restaurant that had a view up to the castle, and at night it's lit up. So we were sitting there having our dinner, and they brought out a bottle of red wine that had a little black and white cape around it with Dracula written on the back.
That's kitsch.
That's
All
kitsch.
right.
I got the cape.
Now, let's move on to less kitsch things.
Yeah.
Climatically, the Carpathian Mountains.
Well, they get very cold winters. They get warm. It actually got quite hot in some places where we were. They get quite warm summers, but the soils are deep. They get regular rains, so it's not dry. It's never dry. It's always, the ground is always damp.
Yeah.
So you can grow a lot of those plants, or they grow there, a lot of those plants that in fact require those sort of cool, moist, meadowy type conditions.
Yeah.
And of course there's lots of woodlands and forests there as well. So there's lots of woodland things like wood anemones and other things that grow there as well. So there's a whole range of things, and there's beech forests and there's conifer forests, and just to walk through the forest, and again you'll see plenty of footage in this video, they are just truly beautiful places.
Well, that all sounds amazing, but Stephen, let's get to the point in question, which is the wildflowers. So, firstly, there was quite a few primulas that you came across.
Yes, we saw several Primula species. So we saw some obvious ones like Primula veris, the cowslip. I found a very small colony of the oxlip, which is Primula elata. And we also found a plant that used to be called Carthusianorum, matthioli, which has been included into Primula. So it's got lovely little magenta flowers and rather interesting scalloped-looking leaves around the edge. So we saw several different Primulas while we were there. Beautiful, beautiful plants.
And have they been used to hybridize or create all forms of the primulas that are in cultivation?
Yes, certainly some of them have. Certainly Primula veris, elatior and vulgaris, the classical primrose, have all been used in the breeding of things like polyanthus and some of those other much more bread-looking plants in the Primula family.
Next is Dianthus. Again, another hot to trot perennial, but also sometimes used as an annual in Britain in colder climates.
Yes, well, we only managed to find a couple of different species in the Dianthus group, and apparently we missed a couple of other very important ones that were higher up than we actually managed to get to. The ones that we found were mainly used as rock garden plants, so you'd use them as a rock garden plant. So spiculifolius is a quite small Dianthus with beautiful serrated white petals, and the other one that we had again, only met once or twice while we were wandering around, was Carthusianorum. It had heads of flowers more like a sweet William, so more like the Dianthus that we all know as sweet William, which is a very popular cottage garden plant and also a cut flower.
Now, orchids.
Oh, yes.
So fascinating, the European terrestrial orchids, or terrestrial orchids per se generally, not really cultivated by orchid growers that often.
No, probably not. They're very niche types of plants. And it's interesting that the terrestrial orchids in Europe tend to come from damp meadow situations, often with deep, rich soils, being manured by the cows and things all the time. And yet in Australia, our terrestrial orchids come from some of the worst soils you can imagine.
Fertile, the driest, often clay.
Awful soils. So they're quite a different group of orchids that grow in Europe. And we found, I think, 4 or 5 different species of orchids. So there was Dactylorhiza sambucina, which is the elderflower orchid. Only named so, I believe, because it has whitish flowers like elderflowers have. Doesn't look like an elderflower. We saw Anacamptis morio, Orchis mascula, the male orchid, which is a beautiful, brilliant cerise red one. And we also saw Anacamptis coriophora, which is the bug orchid, which is rather cute little.
They're stunning. And I imagine, if you've got the right potting medium. I mean, we did a video with Jane Tonkin growing things like erythroniums. You've got a rich, meaty, fertile potting mix. You should be able to grow those in a pot.
Certainly some of the Dactylorhizas have been, I had some here for a while and I've slowly killed them, but they certainly can be grown as pot plants, and they certainly make good garden plants in a nice sort of woodlandy border. So many of them could be grown here if we could get hold of them in the first place, which would be the problem.
But they certainly, I mean, very attractive now, particularly in sort of wilded gardens and wilder perennial gardens and meadows in Britain.
Viola was another genus that I met. And we saw 2 or 3 different violas. I think we've got images of a couple of them. So we've got Viola biflora, which is a little tiny yellow viola.
And very yellow.
Very yellow, and a tiny little plant. It only grows probably a couple of inches tall. I saw that in quite a number of places. And there was a lovely purple one, which apparently is a form of Viola lutea, which would designate yellow, because lutea is yellow. So Viola lutea variety westfalica, which is a lovely rich purple. And it was almost getting up to sort of heartsease sized flowers on it. I think it would make a great garden plant if we could get it here. I haven't seen it.
Well, talking of garden plants though, geranium, so we've got here.
Yes, Geranium phaeum, which is commonly known as the widow's geranium because of its dark sort of widow weed coloured flowers. And it was an interesting geranium to find in the wild because there was lots of it, so I saw it in lots of places. Generally in sort of semi-woodland conditions, often quite close to streams and things. And the main interest from my perspective was that I was interested to see how much variation in flower colour there was, because normally you see it as a rather dark, sombre, burgundy-ish colour. And also the foliage. Some had leaves that were almost just straight green, and others had quite heavily marbled leaves with dark sort of burgundy markings in them. And so even from the wild, there's quite a lot of potential, I think, for selecting different forms to grow in gardens.
Which is what has happened with that sort of type of geranium.
Oh yes, and in fact there's a number of cultivars of Geranium phaeum, white flowered ones, different marblings in the leaves, variegated ones, all sorts of different forms that have shown up.
The next thing that seems like classic perennial to me too is Ajuga.
Yes, well the one we saw there, genevensis, wasn't a mat forming Ajuga like the Ajuga repens that most of the forms we grow in gardens were from. So it's a different species. Whether it's ever really become entrenched in horticulture, I don't know. But it had quite tall spikes of really good, rich blue flowers with a darkish foliage. But it seemed to come up as just individuals in amongst the grasses and things. And pretty, but yeah.
So interesting, because you can, I mean, obviously you'd know this, but you get a sense now of why someone selects a plant for horticulture because of like the mat forming Ajuga is very useful as a ground cover perennial, whereas that one you're just describing doesn't perhaps have the oomph to be a standalone taller perennial.
If I had it growing, and I haven't, but if I did, I would probably use it though in amongst small bulbs.
Oh, right.
Because you could have this sort of little colony of it that could then have colonies of bulbs mixed between it,
Right.
and it wouldn't necessarily swamp the bulbs. So, you know, there would be this sort of either combination of the bulbs and the Ajuga in flower at once, or you would have something that would finish and then the Ajuga would come in and do its thing. So there you go.
Stephen, right.
Yeah, so that's what I would do if it was mine.
Now what are we looking at?
All right, so Cyanus montanus is one of the perennial cornflower group, and there are a number of those that are being grown as garden plants, and there's been different selections of colours. There's lovely rich blues, there's burgundies, there's white, and they've become entrenched in sort of cottage gardens.
Interesting, because I kind of thought they were all annuals, but...
Yeah, no, the perennially group, which is in a different genus now to the annual ones, I believe. The perennial ones have been around in horticulture a long time. I can remember seeing them in some of the perennial nurseries over the years.
In your youth?
In my youth, yes. Oh, yes.
Now, this looks familiar.
And it should, because it's a Clematis. And this was highly exciting to find this plant growing.
Why, Stephen, why?
Well, because one, I've grown it off and on over the years. So I've had this particular one, which is Clematis alpina, which of course means from high up. And it's a very light, twiny climber. It would be perfect to, say, grow through a large rose bush or some sort of deciduous shrub that you wanted to adorn with flowers in the spring when the shrub or host plant isn't doing its thing. Or conversely, I could see it growing with, say, an early spring flowering shrub that had yellow flowers, and then you could have the bluey purple of the Clematis growing through it. And because you can prune it back to almost nothing in the winter, it doesn't swamp its host plant. So, yes, Clematis alpina is a lovely thing with its gentle nodding
That's
bells.
the thing. Very, very elegant, because lots of the hybrid Clematis are now so boofy and enormous. That's so elegant. Lovely colour, lovely form to the flower.
Yeah, and again, alpina has thrown up a number of different colours over the years, and it has been used in breeding with other closely related bell-like Clematis, so it is there in horticulture.
Now, Stephen, I'm sensing an obsession.
Yeah, well, I couldn't help myself when I actually found an Oxalis.
Yes.
And as I've said before, and we've done stories particularly on that genus, they come from all over the world. In Europe, there's not a lot of them, and they're mainly woodlander or slightly higher altitude plants. And the one I found was Aceticella, which is commonly known as wood sorrel, and it does grow in quite dense forests with these lovely little delicate white veined flowers. A charming little plant. As far as I know, I haven't found Aceticella in Australia though. I don't think it's ever found its way here, but it's a very common European wood Oxalis.
Now, this looks interesting.
Yes, and it's one of the showiest of it.
Good colour, yeah, good colour.
Fabulous plant. Dictamnus albus, commonly known as the burning bush, and there's a real reason for that. It doesn't burn the eyes.
Not biblical.
No, and I don't think it was used in the biblical sense, but it actually exudes a vapour, I guess you'd call it.
A vapour?
Yeah, and when it's a warm sunny day and the burning bush is in full flight, you can actually set fire to the vapour. So you end up with this sort of flamey thing. It doesn't burn the plant, it just burns the vapour.
What madness! Who discovered that? Who thought, you know what, I'm going to set fire to that and see what happens?
I think it's one of those things that probably happened accidentally, and then people went, wow, look at this, we can do that.
But there's that, but it also just looks like a really beautiful perennial. So is that in cultivation?
Oh yeah, well, it's very popular in Europe as a garden plant, and again has a great look for a cottage garden, perennial border type thing. The only trouble with Dictamnus albus, is that it in fact is quite slow growing, so it takes several years to build up enough strength to start flowering. And so perennial growers tend to be impatient people. They like to have things that do their thing the first year in the ground. If you're going to grow it as a commercial crop, it's slow, so it takes you ages to get them ready for sale, and it takes a long time to flower them in the garden.
That sounds expensive to me.
Well, it could be. I did grow it years ago, but I haven't got it anymore. I probably should attempt to grow it again, although maybe I'm getting too old to grow Dictamnus albus from seed again.
Don't say that, Stephen.
Well, it is what it is. But of course, I probably will anyway, because I've always maintained if I make it to 80, I'll plant something that takes 20 years to flower, because it gives me something to live for. So why not indeed?
Well, talking of something to live for, we have come across this at Antique Perennials when we went to go and visit them. What are we looking at now?
We're looking at veratrum. Now, the one we saw at Antique Perennials was Veratrum nigrum, the black halibarine. The one I saw in Romania was Veratrum album, the white halibarine.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those plants that you have to have dedication to because it is slow. So it takes many years to build up a big enough plant to flower, and with the big pleaty leaves and the spikes of flowers, it's very dramatic. And when you see it like I did, in acres of it, in Romania, we sat and picnicked in amongst the Veratrum album.
Wow.
And it was just breathtaking. And so we had a lovely sunny day. We sat down. We had, I think we had a sausage and some cheese and some bread, and believe it or not, a little bottle of red wine. And we sat down and had the proper picnic with a stray dog that had followed us along while we went for a walk.
Charming, charming.
Yeah.
Now, I guess it's an interesting footnote. So for many people in the world, it is possible to collect seeds when they're on a journey such as this.
Yes.
Not so for us in Australia.
No, exactly. If I got caught with a pocket full of Veratrum seed as I came through the Melbourne airport, I would probably be arrested and my photo would show up on the front page of the local paper the next day.
So there is very strict biosecurity in Australia. So it's extremely difficult to import live plants. You can import seeds, but they have to be from a registered supplier and on a list. So anything that is unusual or rare or new won't be on the list.
Yeah,
so you won't be able to import it.
And in fact, when you get it from a recognised supplier, it has to come in a properly sealed, properly printed and labelled envelope. You can't just get it from a supplier and write something on the front cover. It's got to look like it's commercial seed.
So although Stephen was seeing wonderful things, he could not hunt and gather.
No, I couldn't hunt and gather. And although I have to say, I probably couldn't have done much hunting and gathering anyway, because we're there in spring. And of course, a lot of things are flowering then. So it's great to see them and I can actually take photos of them and enjoy them. But they're not in seed anyway. So I wasn't even tempted to become a smuggler. So there you go.
Good. Now, this surprised me, Stephen.
Why would it surprise you?
I don't know. I just don't associate salvias with sort of high altitude alpine meadows.
Well, now you do. Yes.
What salvia is this?
This is Salvia pratensis, and it's very common.
What's it pretending to be?
It's not pretending to be anything. It's pretensus, which, as far as I remember, is something to do with meadows, and which is where it grows. So it grows in vast quantities. We saw it in lots and lots of different places around Romania. And its spikes came up to about 1 metre tall, and it was a very showy wildflower of the meadow.
And a beautiful blue. So is that in cultivation? Has that been used?
I'm sure pretensis is in cultivation, and I'm sure it's been used in breeding. So it's put its stamp on several other salvias, I would imagine.
Now, we have a salvia playlist with the wonderful Meg. So we've got a video about shade-loving salvias, sun-loving salvias, and salvia propagation. Where was this one growing? In the meadows?
In the meadows. So it was out in the sun, but it wasn't in
moist.
dry. Yeah, so it wasn't dry tolerant, I don't think. So it would need to have a moist border to grow well.
They get around, salvias, don't they?
They certainly do. Well, there's hundreds of species, and I mean, they grow all across the Northern Hemisphere and down into the Southern Hemisphere in some places.
And that wonderful Japanese one that Meg had that she gave me a bit of, which is doing well, that's dormant now because it's in winter. This looks fabulous.
Yes, and it's something I've grown over the years.
I thought as much. Now, I've got footage of yours. What's this one called?
Well, this one is Calthopalustris. The one I've got in my garden is the giant version, which is sometimes known as Calthopalustris subspecies palustris, sometimes known as Polypetala. I'm not quite sure where it falls down with the name, but we saw the wild form of Calthopalustris growing in the damp, boggy areas, and it reminded me of my home garden. So there you go.
Now, this location looks gorgeous.
Oh, well, this was around about as high up into the mountains as we got, and we were walking along this forest trail, and I walked around a corner and there was this gorgeous stream coming down, one of those babbling brooky things, and all the way up the side of it were these big bright yellow daisies. They're commonly known as leopard's bane. Doronicum caucasicum was the species we found, and they're regularly garden plants in Europe. Occasionally you see them grown here, but they do need a fairly moist and coolish aspect.
Yeah, it looks it. Were they all by the side of a stream?
Well, where I found them, they certainly were. I'm not suggesting they might not be in other places, but that's where I found them. And I have to say, leopard's bane is working quite well because I didn't see a leopard.
Oh, Stephen, dad jokes. Now, what's this interesting thing here?
Yes. Now, plantains are generally considered weeds. Yeah, they're flat weeds that you get in lawns, and they get those brown bullet-like flower heads on the top of them. Not much to
write home about from Romania.
Yeah, but I came across Plantago media growing in the alpine meadows when I was there, and it has the most beautiful pink fluffy flowers on it, and it's really lovely, and I would like to grow Plantago media in my own garden.
Well, there you go.
I do have one, and we did do, or not that species, but I have another Plantago, and we did do a story on colourful and attractive weeds.
Oh, handsome weeds.
Yeah, handsome weeds. And I have in the garden at home a purple-leafed plantain, Plantago major rubra. And so it sort of tickled me to see this other plantain that actually has quite some, I think, ornamental value. It'd be lovely in the front of a herbaceous border or what have you with its little pink. In fact, the flowers reminded me of sanguisorba.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and we did a video on them.
With antique perennials.
Yes, exactly. So I thought the Plantago was rather fun.
FYI, there is an Alpine Society. What is it? Alpine Plant Society here in Victoria?
Yes, the Alpine Garden Society.
Alpine Garden Society. We'll put the link below because they often have plant sales and exchanges. So if you're in Victoria or Melbourne and you're interested in alpine plants, a lot of which you've seen in this trip, we'll put the link below.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Stephen, thank you. I've loved our romp through the Carpathian Mountains.
And I saw lots more than we've actually put on our video, but anyhow, that'll give you a taste.
And just remind the viewers, what month were you there?
We were there in May, so it was in sort of high spring, and so lots of things were well and truly underway, so it was a good time to visit.
And what was this fabulous book that you're looking at?
Oh, yes. You mentioned King Charles and his interest in Transylvania particularly, which is a segment of Romania. And he produced, or had a whole pile of botanic artists produce, a Florilegium of Transylvania. 200 copies were produced. It's a 2-volume set and it's an elephant folio, so it's a really big thing. And we were fortunate to go to the Transylvanian Botanic Art School, where the owners there showed us what they were doing. We met some of the students who are learning there at one of their courses, and they had one of, I think, 3 sets of the books that have actually made it back into Transylvania. And at about $15,000 a set, I can understand why. But we were allowed to open and look at these pictures, and at least 2 artists who painted some of those paintings are people we know quite well from Australia. So there you go.
You're there with Craig, your partner, who is himself a botanic artist.
Exactly. So you can imagine his excitement when we got invited to the Botanic Art School for a start. Then we're offered lunch, and then they said, would you like to see the Florilegium of Transylvania? Well, talk about a holy grail. That's when I found out how much it was, because I decided I'd find out.
Right. Well, on the Christmas list.
Yes, that's right, exactly.
Santa,
if anybody wants to buy me the set.
$15,000 2-volume.
And it might have been £15,000.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is about 30,000 Australian dollars.
Yeah.
Yowza.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
but I'd probably have one of the few sets in Australia. I believe there's one at the Melbourne Botanic Gardens.
Ah, right. Well, there you are. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for taking us through amazing wildflowers. Now, you do tours to many other places, but not this one.
No, this was done as a personal trip. Both Craig and I have been for a long time wanting to do Romania. In fact, we'd nearly planned it before COVID set in. So, probably 7 or 8 years ago, and then it all fell apart. So we've managed to do it this time.
Well, fantastic. Now, who knows what we might be doing next week, equally as exciting. But if you want to know, you'll have to hit subscribe.
And don't forget my Monday shorts. If you've got a question you'd like to ask, put it in the comments below. Tell me where you're from for context, and we will answer it on a Monday.
We will. We shan't be in Transylvania next week, but wherever we are, we look forward to seeing you.
All right, bye all.